Hey, welcome NFL football fans. It's that time again. Time for another edition of NFL Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. This is an Inside Sports production, and we are finally down to, we know who's going to be in Super Bowl 52 coming up in just a week or so here. And we're going to take a look at the NFL this week, look at the trends, everything from the season. There's a new football league starting, everybody. It's going to start in 2 years. We'll tell you all about that. Will it be successful this time? We don't know, but let's go ahead and get right into it. Let me go ahead and bring in my co-host. Many of you already follow on Twitter, and if not, you should be. You follow him at Chris L Sports. That's at CHRIS, the letter L, and then Sports. He is a proud graduate of Rutgers University from somewhere in an undisclosed location in beautiful Southern California. Lives my favorite East Coast intellectual, Chris Lardieri. How you doing out there, man?
Charles, thanks as always. I've got the Rutgers shirt on tonight to prove I actually went there. Can't believe we are here right before Super Bowl 52. Where did the season and the year go?
Yeah, I know. Here we are, and that's. I just wonder though, with ratings and everything, the way that they were, and then the playoff season. I mean, I love football, but there were only a couple of really compelling games in there, all the way through the championship weekend. And championship weekend itself was half dud when we looked at the Vikings scoring the first touchdown of the game and then giving 38 unanswered points up to the Philadelphia Eagles and losing that game. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, they had the Patriots. They didn't have them beaten. But when you put a team down by 10 points in the fourth quarter, you have a legit shot to win that game, and they just flat out could not do it. But you know what? We got to say that the ominous precursor really happened near the end of the first half when they were at the Patriots' 44-yard line, 3rd and 7, and what happens? They wind up back at their own 45, punt to New England. So instead of them getting a field goal and extending their lead, they punt the ball to the New England 15. New England goes on an 85-yard drive and scores a touchdown right before the half. And even though Jacksonville still led 14-10, I think we kind of all knew what was coming.
Yeah, definitely. And then even in the second half, the controversial fumble by Miles Jack, turned out he did pick up the ball, but as usual, the whistles blow. And that's one thing that drives me nuts about the NFL. These referees blow the whistle, whether they know the play is dead or not, all but killing anything. And with the way the rules work, he gets the ball, but he can't advance it. So there's another turning point. And let's face it, besides that, when you have the Patriots down, as we learned in the Super Bowl last year, see the Atlanta Falcons, you need to put them away. A 10-point lead is not enough. And at the end of the day, Blake Bortles couldn't get the job done as we suspected when they needed to convert. Even late in the game, they had their chances driving down the field, and he couldn't complete passes. And ultimately, that's what differentiates the Patriots from their opponents. I mean, you look at a team even like the Eagles, a lot of people think this is going to be a cakewalk. I mean, we can discuss that in the coming shows, but at the end of the day, when you got Tom Brady versus Nick Foles, this is why people think the Patriots are invincible. And the only man to slay him twice was Eli Manning, who may or may not keep his job with the Giants. But, say what you want about the guy. He won 2 Super Bowls against one of the greatest franchises in NFL history. So moral of the story, Doug Peterson, you better shoot to kill on next Sunday in Minneapolis, proverbially, of course.
Of course. Chris Lardieri does not advocate gun violence. Okay, there you go. I got you. And, but Jacksonville, still, they were up 20-10 in the fourth quarter, and we'll go through the fumble by Dion Lewis was at the 33-yard line of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But even they got that fumble recovered, and what do? Instead of driving down the field, taking something out of that New England defense and maybe at least getting a field goal, they go 3 and out. So the Patriots fumble. A minute and 30 seconds later, they have the ball back at their own 15-yard line. And what do? 85-yard drive makes it 20-17. Then later on, you got the punt by Jacksonville, punt to the 50-yard line, big return of 20 yards by Amendola. And we all know what's going to happen there. We just knew it.
Yeah.
We knew it. And it was so I mean, I can't say disappointing because it's not like necessarily rooting for one team or the other, but if these teams could just execute, and I'm going to say this, and this goes back to I've been watching football since the 70s. I don't think I've ever seen a team that just flat out executes all game in, game out, and especially in the biggest game, like the New England Patriots. And we talk about the Giants having beaten them twice. What did the Giants really do? It was they stuck to their game plan. They did not make any mistakes, and they had a big play in each of those Super Bowls that really kind of turned things on the Patriots. But these teams, they can get them down, but they can't put them out. When it comes time to play that crucial situational football, nobody does it better than the Patriots.
Yeah, and you've got to hand that to Bill Belichick. That's coaching right there. That's going over situations and beating into their head about not turning the ball over, fumbling, clock management, and et cetera. Talk about there have been studies at sports, baseball, for instance, the manager really only has an effect over a handful of games in a 162-game season. Well, that's not the case in football, and we're clearly seeing that with Bill Belichick.
Yeah, that's true. Now, if we look at Belichick, though, and they talk about will this be the end of the line, the end of the ride for him? And well, we think about it now. He's going to be coaching in what is this 8th Super Bowl now with Brady. So also he's losing his offensive coordinator, and Josh McDaniels is going to be headed to Indianapolis. His defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, is going to go to Detroit. So losing his offensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator, playing in your 8th Super Bowl, you're looking at starting next season with a 40-year-old quarterback. Would this be a time for Belichick, to just say, hey, it's been a heck of a ride, but you guys can rebuild the team with a 40-year-old quarterback, find your offensive and defensive coordinator and a head coach, because I'm not down with the whole quasi-rebuilding thing.
Yeah, normally I would say with any other coach, that's a valid assumption. But after all, this is Belichick, and what's he going to do for a year? I mean, even if he sits out for a year, it's not like he's going to announce. He's not the most charismatic guy or insightful guy like, say, a Bruce Arians, who's rumored to be in the running for the Monday Night Football job. So, I mean, it's a valid possibility, especially given the ESPN report about the supposed strife between Kraft, Brady, and Belichick. But at the end of the day, I just think this guy will keep on coaching. And when he lost Charlie Weiss and Romeo Crennel back, 13 years ago, I believe it was, he kept plugging along. I mean, they didn't have the success right away that they had with the previous few years. But if anything, it might make them more determined.
Yeah, that's true. So, hey, you know what? Major props to him. And also, we got to look at the Eagles. Let's look at the team they're going to be playing. Doug Peterson keeping the group together. And what I liked about this, when I looked at that Minnesota game, now, granted, Minnesota showed the signs of kind of falling apart in the game that they barely won against New Orleans the week before, and then Keenum kind of continued that in the NFC Championship game. But Nick Foles, he was absolutely lights out on a couple of those throws that he made to hitting Torrey Smith, Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, those guys, but he's really playing well. And Foles, this is the best I've seen him throw the ball. I mean, do I dare say since he was in college, maybe?
Yeah, that other year, Chip Kelly was first year with the Eagles, and he only had 2 interceptions. I know they had an early playoff exit, but maybe Doug Peterson is quarterback wizard of sorts. I mean, Foles has bounced around, and look, we got to give the guy some slack. He was with Jeff Fisher and the Rams. We can't necessarily hold that against his body of work. But yeah, other than that 1 year with Kelly, it really hasn't shown signs of this since his days at Arizona.
Right. And then we got Chip Kelly, who proved to, and when you look at his development or lack thereof, you could attribute that to Chip Kelly being kind of a lame duck coach. Then they go to Jeff Fisher. Fisher had both Keenum and Foles and couldn't develop either of them. And you look at this, when we look at Jeff Fisher and how specious his coaching ability may have been, remember, he had Foles, couldn't do anything with him. He had Keenum, couldn't do anything with him. Had Jared Goff, couldn't do anything with him. So at a certain point, you got to look at the common denominator and all that.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is, I believe Fisher came out a couple months ago and said he was interested in coaching again, but guess that market dried up, right?
Exactamundo. So, looking at the Vikings, we talk about that with Case Keenum. Interesting situation they have there, though, with Keenum. And then you've got Teddy Bridgewater, who's supposed to be really their franchise quarterback, but I think he hasn't thrown a pass in, what, 2 years in an NFL game. Then you got Sam Bradford, who, I don't know, what does he average? 5 games a year maybe through his career before he goes down with an injury. And then you got Keenum, who's, so you got those three QBs. Which way do you go there? And remember, in Shermer, their offensive coordinator, now he's going to be coaching your Giants. So even though they got to the NFC Championship game, but a lot of turmoil going on there in the land of 5,000 lakes, I think it is.
Yeah, 10.
And
10,
a lot of mosquitoes. A lot of mosquitoes.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, and 10,000 lakes and Prince, etc. But no, here's what I think. Sam Bradford, too much with the injuries and the amount of money he makes. I think he's gone. There's a very good chance Keenum could leave. I mean, I think he's made himself a fair share of money potentially in free agency with the way he played this year. Bridgewater, remarkable comeback. He did come back. I think he got into one game against the Bengals and maybe threw a couple passes, one of which was intercepted. But at this point, a lot of it what will come into play here is salary cap. And I think of the three, you got to figure Bridgewater coming off an injury would probably be the cheapest options of the three. And I'm sure maybe they go into the draft eventually and look to develop a backup because, as we know, the Eagles and Vikings have shown you need a quality backup quarterback in this league.
Yeah, that's true. But, well, I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. That's left to those guys who make all those millions of dollars and have to do that. I'd say definitely Bradford's out. Then it's a matter of what you want to do with Keenum. And looking at also what Keenum knows he can demand at this point and what he's going to want to work to, to get, will he work with the salary cap or is he going to want to go ahead and get maximum dollars? And both he and Foles, I think what they've done, Foles has turned himself into, hey, you know what? He's a $20 million quarterback now, 25 maybe.
Yeah. Thinking of Keenum, right off the bat, I look at Denver, a team that's established defense and just a quarterback away from probably being a playoff team again. And who knows, Jacksonville, they may just jettison Blake Bortles and look for an experienced veteran. It's not like you need a guy that's going to have to sling the ball 50 times to win with that team. You just need someone to manage the game, make the throws when they need them, and not turn the ball over. So armchair free agency here is those are two potential landing spots for Keenum, in my opinion.
I think so. All Jacksonville needs is a Brad Johnson. That's all they need. They just need a Brad Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay, so and we talked about I talked about your Giants. Pat Shurmur is going to be the coach. Also, Dave Gettleman, who was the GM in Carolina from 2013 to 2016, he's now the GM. So, I mean, you got to like it. That's your team out there. But I kind of like where the Giants are headed now. It seems like they've really got some stable pieces in place there, and maybe they can get back to being Big Blue.
You would think, but until that team addresses the offensive line and the looming contract issue they're going to have with OBJ, who's looking to make big-time Antonio Brown money, I'll believe it when I see it. And, I'll give Gettleman this. He talks a good game. He loves doing interviews with the Daily News and the Post in New York. He loves talking about how Eli's his guy and this and that. He's doing a lot of talking. I mean, he's quite the opposite of Jerry Reese, but talk is cheap. And let's face it, the Giants leaked out there that they wanted McDaniels or Patricia, and they ended up with Shurmur, and he's their second choice, however they want to spin it. Now, I know Shurmur's done wonderful things with quarterbacks, but he didn't have a great run as head coach in Cleveland, had issues with the media there. Good luck in New York, the eye of the tiger, the mouth of the shark, whatever analogy you want to use. But at this point, they need to fix that line. They need to get those malcontents on defense straightened out, and we'll see what happens there. That said, they play in a division, the NFC East, where teams can easily go from worst to first. You look at what the Cowboys did a few years ago. You look at the Eagles coming off a 7-9 season, made it to the Super Bowl. So it's not going to take a heck of a lot of work, but I think a lot will be hinging on that number 2 pick. What do they do? Do they pick Eli's successor, or do they think Davis Webb is able to be developed into a starter in a few years? Do they take Saquon Barkley? Do they trade out of that pick and acquire picks to build up in other areas of need? Remains to be seen, but it's going to be an interesting offseason. And I'll go out on a limb and say I think they'll be better than 3-13 next year. That's about all I can assure you.
Yep, there you go. I would take that bet. And also interesting, Mike Vrabel, who was the defensive coordinator for the Texans, now he's going to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. So let's get this straight. The Tennessee Titans upset Kansas City in the playoffs. And after that, they lose to the Patriots like, teams tend to do. But then their coach and the team decide to mutually part ways, whereas the coach, Andy Reid, who suffered that huge upset, had no business losing that game. He's still in charge in Kansas City. That's the way that goes?
Yeah, see, the problem with Andy Reid, he's got this little thing called leverage, and he gets paid a lot of money, whereas Malarkey's contract was up. So, they could just call it a mutual parting of the ways when essentially Malarkey was fired because they just chose not to sign on the dotted line with a new deal. So that's how it works in life, man. It's all about the money and the crowbar you've got.
All about the Benjamins. It comes down to it again.
Kelvin.
Okay, so hey, now amidst all the declining ratings of the NFL, and I know it's there's a lot of hyperbole involved in that, but like I said, a lot of people, they're following the league, not necessarily sitting down to watch the 3.5-hour games anymore. And I spoke with someone recently who kind of boycotted the season with the whole players kneeling thing, and he hasn't watched any games. And one of the things he said was just how freeing it was to actually have an extra day added into the week during football season. And really is not wavering from it. I know I didn't speak to the one person who is the oracle into the minds of everyone who ever watched football, but I think when you talk about starting new habits, once next football season starts, you're going to have all these people who realize now that they can get through an entire football season without watching it, and the sun still keeps coming up every morning. The NFL might find themselves in a bit of a quandary there.
If you're tired of sifting through flea markets for rare and unique games, we can help. Retro City Games in Henderson, Nevada, only 5 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, has all your favorite gaming staples, classics, and a wide selection of rare games with new stuff always appearing on our shelves. Come in and chat with Nicole or Doug about your love of games and watch as they help you complete your collection or find your childhood favorite. And don't forget, Retro City Games loves trade-ins. So if you have any Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, Xbox, PlayStation, or even PC games, come in and visit Retro City Games today. Welcome to the new metropolis of gaming, Retro City Games.
And then, you contrast that with Vince McMahon also wanting to fire up the XFL again.
Yeah, I've got to laugh. I think, honestly, the people who boycotted the NFL, they're gone. Are they coming back? I don't know. But there are two things that come to mind here. The NFL ratings were off the charts 2 years ago. I mean, there are a number of reasons for that. They declined last year. They tried to blame it on the election. This year, I don't know what they're going to blame it on. Protests, global warming, lack of rain in Southern California. I really don't know. But one thing I've noticed is the people I talk to who still are watching football have similar complaints. The games are long. They're not as interesting. College is more exciting. Honestly, and the league will never admit to this or address this, the product is watered down because they're oversaturating us with it. They start on Thursday night in a game which neither team ever seems to want to play, or the players are in it to just not get hurt. So you get a crappy Thursday night game for the most part. Then you've got all day Sunday, you've got Sunday night, and then by Monday night, no one wants to watch again. And like we've said before, unless you got money on the game or fantasy football on the line, people aren't going to watch. Look, I've got two kids. I don't sit down on a Sunday and watch from 10 in the morning till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night like I used to when I didn't have kids. I mean, I'm selective with what I watch. So that said, I still think if you look at the TV ratings, NFL games will probably rank in top 10, 20 of all TV shows in a given calendar year. So in that respect, I don't think it's going away. What the NFL needs to address are things like the pass interference penalty becoming a strategic part of the game when, all right, we're down, let me hurl the ball up 50 yards and throw a little bit behind the receiver and hope the cornerback or safety runs into my guy and we'll get a 50-yard play off a penalty. The stoppages with replays, the stoppages with referees trying to decipher what's going on. I know they're trying to work on the commercial breaks and shortening those, but look, the games are getting longer, and people are distracted by other things that they weren't 30, 40 years ago, like phones and streaming media, and the fact that there's a heck of a lot more channels even to watch on TV, whether you cut the cord or not. So it's a number of things at play here, but I do feel very strongly that, protest or not, you've got a game that it seems like from Thursday night on, it's always on, and at some point you're just going to reach this law of diminishing returns with your product, and the league's not going to change that. I mean, we've seen the stories. They're already putting the Thursday night package up for bid, and they'll probably get top dollars potentially from one of the networks. So this is a league that essentially just keeps draining the pig of whatever cash it can get, and ratings be damned, and long-term fan base be damned.
Yeah, it's true. As long as it's bringing the money, they'll keep on doing it. And then, so what would you think about, amidst all this, Vince McMahon trying to resurrect the XFL? And we know that these alternative football leagues have never worked, even when there weren't as many options. So even back to the WFL in the 70s, that didn't work. The USFL was probably the most successful of all of them, but it didn't really work. And then the XFL, when the first time around, only lasted one season. Now, what I've got to think, though, is he's targeting 2020 to start the first season. And it's going to be an 8-team league. They're going to play a 10-week season. And they're in 8 cities that are yet to be named. But we got new stadiums going up in Los Angeles, new stadium going up in Vegas. Do you see any strategic planning maybe going on there with Mr. McMahon?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the guy loves being in front of the camera and potentially making money. And it's funny how he flip-flop from 13 years ago when it was all bets were off and we're going to have half-naked cheerleaders on the sideline and mic coaches and guys with names that hate me on the back of their jersey. And to now it's good old wholesome family American fun. And I don't think it's going to work then. It didn't work then. I don't think it's going to work now. I get that there's an alternative and there's a market. And I'll give him this much. He said he wants the games to be 2.5 hours long. So I hope he is successful with that, because that could potentially force the NFL into making some changes. But at the end of the day, we as a country, we don't watch minor league sports. I mean, we watch college and we watch professional. And whether people like it or not, college is the de facto minor league, especially in basketball and football, for their professional sport counterparts. And what you're going to get with this XFL is a bunch of guys who maybe are CFL caliber players, couldn't make it in the NFL. I watched an interesting 30 for 30 with my son about the 87 strike. It's called Year of the Scab, and how the Redskins put a team together because the owners were trying to apply pressure to the players and got replacement players to keep playing the game. So that didn't last very long. That strike ended after a pretty short walkout. So I really don't think it's going to be successful. I mean, I admire the man for his bravado and courage and trying to address this market that he feels is out there. But I'm not going to watch. Unless there's nothing else on, maybe out of curiosity, I'll see what the product looks like. But the NFL and is essentially based on names. And I think another thing that really hurt the league this year is your star players are out, your Aaron Rodgers, your OBJs, your JJ Watts, Deshaun Watsons. That's going to affect your ratings. And if you have a bunch of no names playing in the league, I don't think people are going to devote any time to that on a weekend.
That's true, but there were a lot of big names in this is Pro Bowl week here. The NFL just had the skills competition. There were a lot of big names in that. Nobody watched that, and the Pro Bowl is coming up, and nobody will watch that. So I guess you got to have competition, real competition mixed in.
Yeah. To clarify, we're not going to have practices or exhibitions. I've been to Rams training camp twice. I went to Giants training camp back in the day. They don't get the crowds that a real game do because it's practice. So they could spin the Pro Bowl all they want because ESPN's good at that sort of stuff. But no one wants to watch an exhibition where everyone's essentially playing not to get hurt.
Yeah. Yep, very, very true. It's about the competitive nature. That's why it becomes compelling when you got a bunch of guys out there, and that's why it is so horrible. And even in sports where they're not necessarily going to get hurt, but in sports where that competitive fire is not burning, you can feel it when you're sitting and watching. I've watched a few games with star players who were just out there kind of fooling around, and I don't show up to watch pro players not give 100% effort. So that's what it's all about, sports, the unscripted drama, and you just don't want to see guys out there just fooling around. We don't want to see it.
Exactly. You can go to a playground and see that. I mean, look at the Olympics. Theoretically, although in some countries it's not the case, these are amateurs, but they're really not only representing their countries, they're laying it all on the line. What did Jim McKay once say? The human drama of athletic competition. I mean, that embodies it right there.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, everybody, remember this show is NFL Football Talk every single week through this season, and we'll do a show after the Super Bowl to wrap everything up. We'll do one before to give our picks and prognostication and the X's and O's about who's going to win the Super Bowl. You can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. Follow Mr. Lardieri on Twitter at Chris L Sports. That's at Chris, CHRIS, the letter L, and then Sports. So we're just about out of here in this the Pro Bowl week here. So, Mr. Lardieri, any final words for everyone?
Sure. The city of Philadelphia never ceases to amaze. We saw in the last few weeks, we saw a Eagles fan punch a police horse. Then before Sunday's NFC Championship, we saw the riot police and said horses go in. It's a debauchery. The Philadelphia Police Department applied Crisco to utility poles, so celebrating Eagles fans wouldn't climb them on Sunday night. We saw one guy running to get a subway train smack into a pole. So some things never change. But I will say, going into the Super Bowl, I think it'll be fascinating if the Eagles win. I mean, what's Philadelphia going to look like? I mean, they're just going to be home videos galore all over the internet and social media for the whole family to enjoy for days.
Well, you know what? That's what you call Philly charm, and no matter what, they still make a darn good cheesesteak there, homeboy. Yeah,
I'll give them that. I've been there enough and have friends from there and relatives that live near there. I guess it's not the Merriam-Webster definition of charm, but I get what you mean. It's got some sort of chutzpah, as they say, right?
There you go. Okay, everybody. So, hey, thanks for watching. And for Mr. Chris Lardieri, I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr. Thank you for watching NFL Football Talk. This is an Inside Sports production. We'll see everybody next week.
Hey everyone, venture into the pop culture cosmos today, where you'll hear our conversations on different topics within the world of movies, TV, video games, comic books, technology, board gaming, and more. You'll also get a taste of some of our other shows within the cosmos as well. So come on and join us each week as we delve into the pop culture cosmos.
Welcome to the pop culture cosmos.
And we're back right here with Inside Sports, talking some NBA. We're here at the halfway point of the season. Well, actually, it's just about a little past halfway point, but still, it's been a great season so far. And here to break down the halfway point of the NBA season is my good friend. He is our NBA expert and our man in the know when it comes to the round ball. He is, well, a diehard Clipper fan, and now is a good time to be one, I assure you. It's Anthony Barberin. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Just enjoying the season.
I bet you are more than I am, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's been tough, man. It's been tough with my guys and all the injuries, and I even look at the standings now and contemplate and think, well, you know, where would we be if we had all our players all season? So
that's true. Early on, when the Clippers were in the doghouse and it really looked like they were playing for the top spot in the lottery, it seemed like Chris Paul was somewhere in Houston just smirking and laughing to the side. But lo and behold, behind the coaching of, dare I say it, brilliantly by Doc Rivers, the Clippers have become one of the big surprise teams of this NBA season. And I think I'll start right there because, like I said, we're at the halfway point of the season. What are some of the surprise teams that stand out to you as teams that you didn't think were going to do so well, but have come and really done a great job with what they've had to work with so far in the NBA season?
For me, I would put my biggest surprise, honestly, probably the Indiana Pacers. I didn't see it. I didn't think after getting rid of Paul George, that Victor Oladipo will be able to put his game together this quickly and be this effective, making a jump from what he was playing with the Thunder last year. You could see how it kind of hindered his game. Now he's got more space. The ball is in his hands more, and I think he's being ultra effective. And to me, that's the biggest surprise. I didn't have the Indiana Pacers anywhere in the playoffs this year.
I agree with you. Neither did I. But it looks like that trade for Paul George may, in the long run, work out even better for the Indiana Pacers. So that's something actually really good to see, because I know the Indiana Pacers got a lot of grief from even you and I in regards to that trade for Paul George. And I'm glad to see that Victor Oladipo has really stood out, and also as well Sabonis really helping out off the bench as well. But I got another good team for you as far as surprise. How are your thoughts on the Toronto Raptors and the way they've actually continued to find a new level of excellence, even though they still get thought of as an afterthought when it comes to the Eastern Conference?
I like what Toronto's been doing this season, and it's centered around their change in philosophy and their change in the way they're playing. Where in years past, they've been a very ISO basketball team, going one-on-one with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, having the other role players be secondary guys who, get offensive rebounds or kick out for threes if they're open. Now the ball is moving, there's movement, other players cuts, back screens, things like that, and it's working a whole lot better for them in the long run. When they play in the playoffs, it's more difficult to coach against, to guard against. And I think it leaves their star players with more energy. They don't have to work as hard to get shots. So I think Toronto, I still think they're a player away from being able to really compete, from them scaring you to get out of the East. But it's refreshing to see the way they play. And I think, for me, Cleveland is still the team to beat in the East, but I wouldn't put it past them to be right there where Boston is when it comes to in the playoffs.
And especially way Cleveland is currently experiencing a kind of a sour note. But you and I have seen this before when it comes to Cleveland on their continual roller coaster ride during the season. But in this season in particular, even LeBron has admitted to reporters that this season has definitely been a tough one for him in regards to trying to figure out what's going on with Cleveland, their consistent lack of defensive prowess. And now their age seems to be an issue with a lot of the same older players, even though very talented still. They are all seemingly in the same area as far as their age is concerned. And maybe that's catching up a little bit on LeBron's team with the Cleveland Cavaliers, not exactly performing up to the standard which we thought they would be at this point in the season. They're one of the teams that are kind of a disappointment this year, but I wouldn't put them as a 100% yet, because they're still 10 games above 500, and they're still a team that is still definitely thought of as a favorite to come out of the East. Although when we talk about Toronto, yeah, that's definitely their time is now. When if they need to make a move, they need to make a move shortly to see if they can get past either Boston or Cleveland right now in the East. But I want to hear your thoughts on other teams that maybe have not quite been up to snuff when we were predicting our teams that we thought would be doing really well. I want to hear your thoughts on teams that have disappointed so far halfway through the season. Cleveland is a team that maybe hasn't quite met up to what we thought, but there are other teams as well that have really not met up to expectations. Oklahoma City is just starting to get out of that mix, but even with their record, I think we both thought they'd be doing a little bit better. But I know there's some other teams as well when it comes to a disappointment on your list that we'd be expecting from them at this point of the NBA season.
As far as Oklahoma City, I'm not actually too disappointed. I thought that they would take a while to gel. When you have a player that's as dominant as Russell Westbrook is with the ball in his hands, and your other guys are guys who are used to and have played their entire career with the ball in their hands, or the peak of their careers with the ball in their hands, sometimes it takes adjusting. It's an adjustment period, especially if I think there's a little bit of a lack in the coaching in being able to get those guys the ball where they wanted, where they needed, to be able to play together. I think they play too much ISO ball, and there's not a good enough system to allow them to flourish together. And I think that's what's taking them so long to learn how to play as a unit. And I thought that, if they relied more on defense and picking up defensive pressure, then that would allow them to gel faster and to win more games. But I think they're close to where they need to be. As long as they don't go in another slump, I think they'll be decent. A big disappointment for me is the Washington Wizards in that Eastern Conference. There's no reason, man, that they should be, only 5 games above 500. I know John Wall, has had an injury or two, and there was a stint where it was, Bradley Beal was the main guy. But that unit has been together far too long, and they have too much talent to be sitting at 500. And I think they're, 5th in the Eastern Conference, but they're a better team than Miami. There's no reason Miami should be ahead of them. To me, they're my biggest disappointment. There's some other teams that I thought would be in the mix. I thought Charlotte would be a little bit better, but as far as the biggest disappointment goes, I think Washington has been my biggest disappointment.
I think Utah should have been a little bit better at this point in the season, but I know they've had injuries with with Rudy Gobert mainly being out a good portion of the season, and that affects their entire defense and the way they play their games. Him being out, I know, has caused the Utah Jazz to not exactly be where they need to be, even though they have an outstanding rookie leading the way right now at this point in time. But I know you talked about Charlotte, and that's a good place where I want to start talking about our next subject. When it comes to Charlotte, they have a great player and one of actually my favorite non-Laker players, because I love the Lakers, in Kemba Walker. I think he is an outstanding player. I really like the way he plays. A great shooter from outside. I think he's able to go ahead and score wherever he needs to. A little bit undersized, but for defensive purposes, but still, he has been an all-star, and even though he's not going to be an all-star this year, he is still playing at a very high level. He is, to me, one of the leading candidates to be traded for a really good pick or good players or something great in exchange. Who are some of the players that you see will be on the trading block coming up very soon? Because we're fast approaching the NBA trade deadline.
Well, there are the main guys. There's been talk around surrounding DeAndre Jordan to Cleveland. Paul George was early on before they started to pick up the way they were playing. Kemba Walker's one I've heard talk to CJ McCollum. Marc Gasol is another. The main teams that I've heard around is basically Cleveland. I mean, they're the one team who you see as the team that thinks one more player can put them over the top. They've been reluctant to get rid of that or to release that Brooklyn Nets pick. That is, at this point, I believe it's the number 7 or the number 6 pick, somewhere around there of where it stands. But they need an influx of youth and athleticism. But those are the players. I mean, DeAndre Jordan is a big one. But as you see, the Clippers have been moving towards getting back in the playoff hunt. Kemba Walker, like you said, CJ McCollum. I think actually even a couple of your guys will be on that list. Jordan Clarkson, maybe a Julius Randle.
I wish you would tell me a little all dang, but nobody wants his contract, and there's not enough to trade.
Nobody wants his contract. Yeah, that'll be a very difficult one to get rid of. I feel the same way. I mean, there's a guy that we just signed by the name of Danilo Gallinari who I wouldn't mind getting off the books. But
exactly, I couldn't blame you at all because he instantly gets hangnail and is out for another 2 weeks. But yeah, it's seemingly anyways. But there's also Larry Nance Jr. I know for the Lakers, who's another could be possible decent player as far as that's a trading block, candidate. Also as well, I know we mentioned in the past DeMarcus Cousins. If New Orleans starts on a tailspin or New Orleans doesn't really like or enjoy being around the 7th or 8th spot and they don't really want to trade Anthony Davis, the fact that DeMarcus Cousins and his contract status also makes him a candidate to be shipped out at some point as well with Cleveland. But Boston, I think, is a easier destination for DeAndre Jordan and also as well a DeMarcus Cousins, because Boston, I believe, in my opinion, has even still more bargaining chips that they can dangle in front of teams like the Clippers or New Orleans in order to get them or another player that they desire over to their team over Cleveland, because Cleveland, it's just about that first round pick and some expiring contracts. Maybe the Boston Celtics could throw even out one more draft choice on top of that, but we'll have to wait and see. I know, Anthony, I'm going to ask you to come back right after the trading deadline so we can analyze all the great trades that will come down in the NBA. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your analysis on exactly how those trades, once they come to fruition, will come out for those teams. And as we look ahead to the NBA playoffs, we'll go ahead and break that down for you as soon as the trading deadline comes up here in just a couple weeks. Well, it all starts with the MVP balloting, because, MVP is something that a lot of people are even from the get-go are focused on. And I know there's still a lot of good players out there that are involved, but to me, one player stands out right now, even though their team is not having the greatest of seasons health-wise when it comes to, James Harden being out. Kyrie Irving has been out for a little bit. To me, it comes down actually to two: Kyrie Irving or LeBron James. I would still go with LeBron James. I think he's having a superior season. I think it's more of a team effort in Boston, and I think it's more of a him effort in Cleveland. To me, he is more valuable at this point in time, but you might have some other thoughts on some players like James Harden or someone else that might actually be a better choice at MVP. So your thoughts on the most valuable player at this point in the halfway through the NBA season?
Yeah, halfway through. We're halfway through and looking at the players. I mean, there's a lot of candidates. There's, like you said, LeBron, who's always a candidate and probably should have more than he has. Kyrie's in a discussion. You got Kevin Durant in Golden State. I would even throw DeMar DeRozan in the discussion. But at this point, I mean, he missed a few games. James Harden would still be my top at this point. If he missed any more, if his play goes down, then I can definitely see someone else getting it. James Harden would be my top pick, followed by LeBron, and then KD third. Those are my top three guys.
Now, KD statistically is having a great season, and he's really focused on his defense and almost I think he's one of the top 5 in the league in block shots. But the only thing with Kevin Durant to me is I think the record is worse with him playing and Stephen Curry out of the lineup than with him out of the lineup and Stephen Curry in. So I've seen losses where he's had to take control, and I don't see that kind of rallying around his performance yet with the Warriors. I see him almost like last year when he comes in when they're all together, and him providing that nice 10 to 15 points in a small amount of time, and then those bursts that only he can do seemingly, and providing that two-way from both the defense and offensive end when they're all together. But it's seemingly, even though he's still getting great numbers when Stephen Curry's out of the lineup, the team is not winning quite as much.
And that's to be expected. I mean, Steph Curry's a top 5 player. You take that off any team, and most teams will struggle a bit. However, they have the best record in the league. They're better on the road than they have been at home. I think that's how focused they are when it matters. At home, you know, a lot of teams, it's reverse. You win at home because you got the crowd, you're comfortable, you're relaxed. This team seems like they have that, but when they go on the road, they get focused. And that's something that's scary. I think Kevin Durant, like you said, I think he slumped a little when Steph Curry initially got hurt. I think they went on a run though for a while, and Steph's back now. His numbers are great. He's been great on both ends of the court. I think he's either first or second in blocks. He's putting up 25 plus a game, high rebounds, decent assists. He's having a really really great season.
They both are,
LeBron's,
and that's another thing when you're talking about MVP balloting. You've got Kevin Durant on the left and Stephen Curry on the right, and I think they will never win an MVP, either of them, as long as if they both remain somewhat healthy, because they're both so great. They both take votes away from each other, if that makes kind of sense.
oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Because for a lot of people, it's hard to discern who is the guy on the team, who is, the leader and the best player on that team. And when you have that, you can split the reasoning of who's the reason they are winning the way they're winning. And so, like you said, that can split votes, and it'll cause you, to be out of the running. So yeah, I think it 1 and 2, it'll come down to James Harden and LeBron, whoever, has the best record probably at the end of the season. I know one knock is, I think, where it stands now, but I think they were 10-7 without Chris Paul when they were at one point. When he played, they were 17-4. So that kind of is in the same way you talk about Durant.
I also know as well, Clint Capella, Chris Paul, and James Harden, when they all played together, they're undefeated. So at least as of this taping. So that tells you right there, when they're all playing together, they're pretty hard to beat.
Absolutely. And that's just a testament to how they play together, D'Antoni's system, and, the continuity that's needed to be successful.
Well, one last thing, my friend, before we let you go. Once again, this is Anthony Barberin, our expert in the NBA and everything round ball. I'll ask you one question, my friend. I know it's the one we always end with, and it's always Warriors related. But is anyone close at this point in time, in your opinion, to beating the Warriors and giving them more than a challenge this point if the NBA Finals were to start today?
No. there's nobody.
I keep asking, and I keep getting the same answer, and I don't blame you a bit.
Unless Cleveland makes, I think Cleveland's getting out of the East. Unless they make a trade and get a DeMarcus Cousins or Anthony Davis, somebody like that, or even somebody you don't expect and they can help. I just don't see the Warriors. I say this: the Warriors have the most explosive scorer in the NBA, and then they also have Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. I think Klay Thompson is the most explosive scorer since Kobe. Like, he's that type of talent, but That's
true. That's true, because when he goes off, as we've seen with his remarkable game, I think it was last year, where he didn't even put the ball on the floor. He put the ball on the floor less than 5 times, and he scored 60 points, I believe, plus. And that, you're right. When with him and Curry and Durant on the floor at the same time, all it takes is just one of them going off to just put the other team away if they're focused. And you're right, as far as their control and their attention outside of their home floor. They've won so many in a row away from home. And it just, like you said, it just shows that they have a supreme confidence in their abilities, even where other teams are not when they go ahead on an opponent's floor.
Golden State is the team. They're the team to beat, barring any injury, which, it's professional sports, it's professional basketball, it's grown men banging into each other. You never know what can happen. But all healthy, I don't see anybody beating this Warriors team. I think they have 3 Hall of Fame players on the same team, all in the prime of their careers, and that's very tough to beat.
And Draymond Green right behind them as a possible borderline Hall of Famer himself if he keeps playing like he is. And they still have those teammates that he gets to feed everything to and feed everything through, and he keeps playing his defense the way he does. Then you could definitely see those 4 reaching that milestone of another NBA championship at the end of this season. Well, that's definitely some great analysis by our good friend Anthony Barberin. If you have any questions for Anthony Barberin and you want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the NBA, feel free to drop us a line, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Popculture Cosmos, Game Source, Humanica Media, and Inside Sports on Facebook or Twitter will gladly go ahead and relay the message to Anthony on our next broadcast and definitely share his thoughts on what he thinks is going on in the NBA. Like I said, I'm going to bring him back if he wants to come back for the NBA trade deadline, and we're going to break down all the good trades, the big trades that went on during that time. So hopefully in a couple weeks he'll be able to come back and be able to provide some analysis for us then. But Anthony, I'll tell you what, it's been a good season so far in the NBA. Nothing earth-shattering or nothing, I guess, out of the ordinary so far this year, but definitely it's been a strong season so far in the NBA. And I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to a great second half of the NBA season and also your insight on what's going on with the NBA.
Absolutely. I can't wait to be back, talk a little trade, talk about the playoff push, and then see where we're going.
And we'll see if I can break you down a little bit more on if the Warriors might have a little bit of a challenge. I don't know. It's still pretty firm with me as well, but maybe somebody can pull off a trade that might change our minds. Maybe Boston, maybe Cleveland, maybe even Houston can maybe swing something that will say, hey, this team could be on any given day, be the team to match up to the Warriors. And then again, you and I could still just be laughing it off right away. So definitely great to hear from you, my friend. It is, once again, Anthony Barberin right here with us at Inside Sports, also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media. Just truly great to have you here, Anthony, and looking forward to talking to you at the trade deadline about all the action going on in the NBA.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Anytime, my friend. And it's always good to hear from you from the Inside Sports and also as well the Pop Culture Cosmos.
Brink here from Super BS, talking about the things you know you love and the things you'd love to know. Join us weekly for a podcast about video games. Mostly.
Oh, yeah.